Well, good afternoon. I used to work at Walgreens too, but I didn't do as good a job as these fellows. Everybody's got a story. And this is great to be here today. I will say, I have to tell you a little bit about getting here. I got here like at 11 o'clock at the airport, and I arrived here about 12:30. And the GPS said we were only like 3 miles from the airport. My car has 40 miles on it. I forgot how interesting it is to drive in Boston. Rachel, is this going to work now? I think it may play again. It's not that I'm computer illiterate. I'm a Mac guy, so I don't have to be computer illiterate. And let's go to slideshow. Excellent. All right. This is my family. I brought two of my members with me today. My wife, Kay, is over here, and my daughter, Allison, is over here. This is the first time Allison's ever heard me speak. So I had to counsel her not to jump up and say, "You lie," at any point. Our other daughter lives down in, she's finishing up at Massachusetts Maritime Academy, and we're going down there to see her. She's going to get married in October, so we're here for a visit for that. That's Allison there, and that's our son, Austin. Austin's now 26. Austin has autism. And like we have that saying in the autism community, once you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism. Now, Austin was diagnosed about age 3. He didn't speak until he was about age 10. And if you ever get a chance to meet him, you would think he's making up for lost time. Now, his sisters will say he's sort of like a typical brother in some ways, in that he never thought anything about any of their boyfriends until they got a new boyfriend. And then all he wanted to do was talk to the new boyfriend about the old boyfriend. He drives. He drives in Illinois. It took a village. She went through the driver's ed a couple of times, passed his driver's test on the first time. Now, Allison, who's here today, there on the left, failed hers twice.
I regret nothing.
So one day Allison has some friends over to the house, and Austin's sitting on the side listening to this, and their kids are talking, and Austin says, "Elmer, Allison failed her driver's test twice." Now you can imagine how Allison's dealing with this. So I think it's okay, real-time intervention, a little coaching. Austin, you can't talk about Allison's driver's test. You can only talk about your own. Elmer, on my driver's test, I didn't back over a yacht. And so this is the first time Allison's heard this story, me tell it. So, and your reply would be today?
To be fair, it was a very narrow road.
But despite Austin's gifts and his charms, he has lots of challenges. He probably reads about a 4th grade level. It's not unusual. He has no peer friends. Never been invited to a party. I've never played a game of catch with my son. Not any kind of game. And if you ask him a what-if question, that would be way, way beyond his ability to express. Not his ability to think, but his ability to communicate, which a lot of us parents and a lot of us people work with people in the ASD know that to be true. And if he's like most kids like him, he'll never be offered a job. And that's something we parents in the room start thinking about almost from day one. Because a job can mean independence, it can mean relationship, it can change the entire arc of a life. And if a driver's license is the equivalent of a summa cum laude from Harvard or MIT, take your pick, a job would be like a Nobel Prize. And we all share that same hope and dream, just to live one day longer, maybe just one day, 1 hour longer than our child, because we know what's waiting for them. Because when it comes to getting a job, people with disabilities, not just autism, but generally across the board, die a death of 1,000 cuts. They may not learn the way we're used to teaching, if we teach at all. They probably can't get through, they have difficulty with that online application system we have. When our son Austin applied in the store, it took store manager Kay and a job coach to get through that, and we still weren't sure. And there's not a single job description in America that doesn't have good communication skills in it. Because we're looking for that perfect blend, no matter what the job is, that perfect blend of Albert Einstein and Will Rogers. 2 inches below the surface. And the unkindest cut, that believed by 99.9% of us, that hiring a person with a disability is great if you can afford it. Because they really can't do the job. That's what they're up against. And knowing this, and seeing how my own son had advanced, and walking into those classrooms, and when that classroom, my son Austin didn't have the benefit of a fantastic place like this. He was in a general special ed program with all kinds of other kids. Now the great thing for me was to be able to go in there and see all those other challenges that people have to deal with. But seeing what the possibility was, and then looking at my professional life. Here I am, this big cheese executive at Walgreens. And we have 20 centers across the United States, 10,000 people. And we're hiring 1,000 people a year. And here's a problem. I know what the problem is, and I know what the solution is, jobs, and we're sitting on them. So I had to ask, if we can't do something about it, who would we expect would do something about it? So we started hiring. And the first step around, we kind of went disability hiring live. I said, let's go ahead and contract out. We're opening up some new functions like tagging merchandise, and we're building some new centers. Why don't we go out and work with some sort of agency who will bring in people with disabilities with their own supervision, and they'll do some sort of ancillary work with their own supervision in their own area. And all the center managers told me that was fantastic. So we'd given them team member t-shirts, and we'd given them name tags, and they felt just like part of the team. But they weren't. And that came clear to me on a visit down to our Dallas center, and this woman came up, one of our team members, I believe she was one of our team members, and she showed me this picture and was telling me how great it was working out. And she showed me the picture, and she was in the picture. And here's the picture. It's a quick picture. She's in the picture. And this is a group, and she feels obligated to tell me, oh, but I'm not one of them. I'm their sponsor. There you have it. Us, them. We had to do better. They weren't us, and they weren't doing mission critical work. And that kind of hardened our resolve to go forward. So we said, why don't we go ahead and hire some of these folks out of this group to do mission critical work? And so see how that works. Now, one of those people we hired was a fellow named Chuck. Chuck was hired in our Lehigh, Pennsylvania center. Chuck has Asperger's. We put him on the line with two experienced women. Mission critical work, picking orders, had to be accurate, had to be quick, had all the pressures. Chuck did a great job, showed up every day, did his job. Now he did have some quirks in this next stage of evolution. One thing we learned about Chuck, his favorite color was purple. Now the reason we know that, because every time a purple tote would pass through Chuck's area, Chuck would start dancing, call everybody's attention to it. So we had to have some meetings. Is this appropriate place for the behavior for the workplace? But that forced us through the discussion of saying, which is more important, style or results? And quite frankly, which would we rather have? Complaining or dancing? Complaining or dancing? Let's go with the dancing. Let's go with the dancing. But Chuck also reminded us that performance comes in lots of different packages. And when I was in that center, I met with the two ladies who work with him, and I said, how's Chuck doing? He said, Chuck does his job, pulls his weight, helps out when he needs to. I said, great. Does anybody in the center and the other 300 people that work in this place have an issue with Chuck? Does he make them uncomfortable? Have they said anything? And I'll never forget, that woman turned to me and she said, well, if they do, they're going to have to come through us. Now we were making some progress. So, time went on. Gee, these things are really fast. I need some training in this. It came time, we had built 4 centers, and it came time to take a pause, and we were going to up the ante and build a whole new generation center, more automated than we'd ever built. Our most expensive building we had ever built. And we'd had some experience with folks like Chuck in our different centers, and we'd gone through this journey, and everybody wanted to kind of say, let's take a chance now. Maybe we can just tweak it in such a way, the automation, that we can enable a large number of people with disabilities to perform as well as anybody in the world. And we weren't going to lower the bar. If anything, we were going to raise the bar. If we were going to be, now remember, we're Walgreens. Did any of y'all shop at Walgreens? Thank you. I was really going to get hurt. We only make 3 cents on the dollar. Most retailers make between 3.7 cents on the dollar. So we're cheap bastards, okay? We're not a charity. So anything we're not going to lower the bar, we're going to raise the bar. And if we were going to make this work and stand tall to our shareholders and all those kind of things, we were going to hold everybody to the same standards, disability or not, pay the same wage, same jobs, side by side, across the board. And we were going to aim high. Now again, remember that remark about us being cheap? We thought that one of the difficult disabilities to employ would be autism. That has not worked out to be true, because everything has its own challenge. But I talked to, we had a man working for us who was autism expert. And I said, okay, we're not going to have a lot of job coaches and things like that. How many peers would I need to be able to support a person with autism? And he said 2, maybe 2. So we had our number. 1 out of 3 people would be a person with disability. And we were going to hire 600 people in this. That'd be 200 people doing mission critical work. And we looked around, and there wasn't anybody in the world who had ever done this before. Now that wasn't a reason not to do it, because we had some experience, and we also wanted to hold ourselves to the following standard. We don't know if this will work. But if we can't, who can? And all the standard is, give it your best. Give it your best, because if it doesn't work, we want to be able to tell the world, if we couldn't do it, nobody can. And guess what? It worked out far better than we would have ever thought. As a matter of fact, we picked the town. As we decided to do this, we started looking for towns, and we asked in each town, we're going to hire a large number of people with disabilities. Can you help us find and train that group of people? And we picked a place in South Carolina, Anderson, South Carolina, the home of radio, coincidentally. And when the news got out, you would have thought that we would have cured cancer. we specifically advertise, we're looking for managers with disabilities, not just entry-level positions, across the board. If we're going to do this, let's go big, and if we're going to fail, we took from Mark Twain, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. And if this is going to be a failure, it's going to be our proudest failure ever. People moved all the way across the country when they heard about this. One of those is Desiree. Desiree Neff. Desiree Neff lived with family in San Diego. She has a rare muscle condition that requires her sometimes to use a walker. And she's working at a temp agency over there. And one day she comes in with her walker, and her boss says, "What's the deal with the walker?" She said, "Well, sometimes I need it." He said, "Great. Come back when you don't." So Desiree packed up her family, moved across the country a year before we opened, just for the chance to be in the line when we opened. And today, she's one of the managers in that building. Now, we couldn't hire every person with a disability. But on the other hand, we haven't found a disability that we automatically have to rule out here, because everything's a spectrum. And we got some terrific employees. Now, this is Angie. Angie has cerebral palsy. She's sometimes difficult to understand. You have to pay attention. Easier than to go to a Shakespearean play. Easier than Hamlet. She has sort of an odd walk. She went to Clemson, made all A's, graduate school, all A's, sent out 300 resumes, 30 in-person interviews, not a single job offer. She is probably our best HR person in the company, as far as I'm concerned, in my 25 years at Walgreens. She just got promoted to her own building. A person who we would have never before considered, because we would have thought, is she a good fit? Will others have difficulty understanding her? Just like with Desiree, we would have never hired her before because we had said that walker. Some of the places are not accessible by a walker or by an elevator, and she might have difficulty with the stairs. Or what if there's a fire and she can't run fast enough? Or Harrison. Harrison has autism, came out of the high school system. I met him in the training center. The community rented space while we were building the building. We gave them some equipment, and they brought in all the partners in the community to help screen and find people so they'd be ready day one. I met Harrison in the center, and Harrison's quite charming. He says, "Randy," when I met him, he says, "Randy, I can process 10 cases a minute. That means I can receive, check against the purchase order, make sure there's no damage, get them sorted right, make sure they're stacked, ready to go, so we can pick orders. I can do 10 a minute." And I said, "That's great, Harrison, but we don't measure in minutes. We measure in hours. How many can you process in an hour? What's 10 times 60? And Harrison goes, "I don't know." Now I know that's 600, and I know our expectation is 400. Here's a young man who we would have never hired because he couldn't get through the long multiplication test in our application, who performs at 150% in every job we give him. And Harrison is the person we go to when we're behind to help catch everybody up. People that we would have never looked at. This building turned out to be the most efficient in the history of our company in 110 years. More than we ever expected. So we studied, and we knew people, and one of the things we said on the front end, and I think this is what got everybody excited, we used to never let anybody come in our buildings. For one of two reasons. One is because we were so advanced we didn't want our competitors to know, or that we were so bad we didn't want our competitors to know. Thank you. But we said when this happens, we're going to throw open our doors to the world. And we're going to give it all away. Because this is bigger than us. So we knew we had to have the numbers. So we called in the statisticians. Do people with disabilities really perform as well? Because that's the question. Is this really, is this really true? So we studied 400,000 hours across 32 jobs across 4 centers. And we published them. All the results. Here's what it says. People with disabilities perform a little bit better, statistically the same. The same. And some people come in, and this is really what, especially with autism, because I've been interviewed like this, that everybody's wanting to know what's special, like they're better. And you have to ask, is the standard Jackie Robinson for everybody? No, isn't the same. That's what we're talking about. Oh, by the way, some of the things you might be surprised about, probably not. Retention's twice as good. Absenteeism is half. And guess what? A big concern that employers have, oh, my medical costs are going to go up. But this is going to be expensive. My accident rate is half for people with disabilities. Same performance, better retention, less absenteeism, cheaper accidents. And we learned not just about performance. I have to show you, I'm going to share the technology. Because this is going to be, I'm going to share it as cheaply as we learned it. It's called ATP. This is our secret. How did people, what's the technology? Because everybody's got best practices. Here's the best practice, number one best practice. ATP, ask the person. Because what we learned is, for example, our job, our standard operating procedure, you pick up a case with 2 hands to do that safely. So we'd automatically exclude somebody with 1 hand or 1 arm. Now we learn, we show them the job and say, how would you do this? Because the objective is how we do the job. And we found out, guess what? These folks have had a lifetime of trying to figure this stuff out. Let's ask them, instead of making assumptions, how many times do we do that in all phases of our life, not just with hiring people with disabilities? And my favorite example is lift trucks, forklift trucks. Forklift trucks are a real hazard around pedestrians. They're fast, they're quiet, sort of like Priuses without the smug factor. So the standard procedure is for a driver to make sure their horn works, because every time they approach an intersection, they need to tap their horn so pedestrians will be able to look at them. So the question came up, can a deaf person operate a forklift safely? A lot of people would automatically say no, can't hear the horn. ATP, ask the person. So we went down and talked to some deaf people on the floor. How would you test your horn? First person. Well, what I would do is I would place my hand where the horn is underneath there, and I would push the button and I could feel it. Makes sense. I like the second person's answer. What I would do is I would pull up behind a group of people who are just talking. You know where this is going? And when we found out that the actual safety rate, the accident rate for deaf lift drivers is half of those for what people can hear, our engineers suggested that we get earplugs for the people that can't hear. But on and on and on. And the thing that amazed us the most was the impact, we knew that we would have impact on people who had never had a chance. And we got into a whole new dynamic. But the impact on people without disabilities, and especially managers, had the biggest impact. They will say, I've had to learn how to treat each person as an individual. You know, something we say all the time, but we rarely do. I've had to learn that each person has a different way to motivate them. With our person with OCD, we learned, you know, by the way, most of our, quote, accommodations, less than $25. Most of them are paper and pencil. A young man with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, who was taking so long in preparing the merchandise, he was worried about how he was going to cut open a case. He was too slow. He wouldn't get through it, but his quality was perfect. But how are we going to accommodate this? So his manager got a piece of paper with the number, draw little squares for the number of cases that he would do every 10 minutes, and he focuses on getting those things done instead of the cut, and guess what? Has no problem keeping. Little things like that unleash the creativity that we never, ever required in the workplace. Managers will say, it's always about getting the job done, and they'll say that anywhere. But in this place, they will say, our number one job is to make everybody around me successful. That's my job as a manager. Because I know when I come here, I make a difference. And people ask, what's a bad day? The CEO of Best Buy came into our Connecticut center. He went through the tour. He was the easiest one to pick out as a CEO because he was on his BlackBerry half the time. And he sits down, we sit him down, and we always sit people down with managers to ask the tough question. Managers that work there, does this really work? How would you fire a person with a disability? You know what the answer is to that one? How would you fire a person without a disability? Some of the things make sense. But he asked a question I've never heard, and I was kind of like, felt like the attorney when your witnesses ask a question you haven't prepared them for. What's a bad day like? And to the person, it's the version of the following. A bad day is when I bring my problems to you. Because one of a few things is going to happen. You know, have you ever had that day when you arrive at work, you want to kick the dog? Like that, this is what's going to happen here. Some people are going to shut down. That's not good. Some people are going to start acting out. That's not good. Some people are going to come up to me and ask me why I'm being a jerk. And some people are going to come up and hug me. So I've learned when I'm here, it's about them, not me. And let me tell you, as a leader, when you have everybody focused on mission and everybody believing their number one job is to make everybody else successful, it's lightning in a bottle. Lightning in a bottle. So here's what happened. That was not 1 out of 3, 30%. This is about 175